Michael Harrison was a self-made millionaire. He'd built a real estate and investment company worth over $50 million. He was confident, arrogant, and loved to brag about his success. He drove a brand new Ferrari worth $300,000. One afternoon, Michael was driving through a working-class neighborhood, looking at properties his company might develop. He pulled up to a red light next to an old 1989 Chevy pickup truck that looked like it was held together by rust and hope. The truck had mismatched paint, broken windows, and a dent in the side. Inside the truck was Danny, a 52-year-old mechanic who'd worked on cars his whole life. Michael looked at Danny and smiled mockingly. "Nice truck," Michael said sarcastically. "How many times did you have to jumpstart to get it here?" Danny didn't respond. He just looked straight ahead, waiting for the light to turn green. Michael wasn't done. He rolled down his window further. "Hey, buddy," Michael called out. "I'll make you a deal. You seem down on your luck. If you can outrun me to the next highway exit 3 miles from here, I'll give you my company. I'll give you everything, the company, the properties, all of it. But if you can't outrun me, you have to give me $5,000. Michael laughed at his own joke. He thought it was hilarious. A millionaire in a Ferrari betting his company against an impossible race in a junk car. Danny looked at Michael for a moment. Then something shifted in Danny's expression. He looked calm. He looked confident. "Okay," Danny said simply. "I'll take that bet." Michael was shocked that Danny had actually agreed, but he was confident. His Ferrari was worth $300,000. It could go from 0 to 60 miles per hour in 3 seconds. There was no way this old truck could beat him. "All right," Michael said, "let's do this." On the green light, we raced to the highway exit. First one there wins. The light turned green. Danny had been a mechanic for 30 years. He'd worked on cars his entire adult life. He understood engines in a way that most people never would. The old Chevy pickup truck that he was driving was, on the surface, a piece of junk. It looked terrible. But underneath that beat-up exterior was something remarkable. Years ago, Danny had found his truck abandoned in a salvage yard. He'd bought it for $200, and then he'd spent the last 10 years working on it in his spare time. He'd rebuilt the engine from the ground up. He'd installed a custom turbocharged system that he designed and built himself. He'd upgraded the transmission. He'd reinforced the chassis. He'd created something that looked like a piece of junk, but was actually one of the most powerful vehicles on the road. Danny had never raced a truck competitively. He'd built it for fun, for the love of working with engines, for the challenge of creating something powerful out of something that everyone else had written off as worthless. But Danny had tested the truck speed. He knew exactly how fast it could go. He knew that it could beat almost any car on the road, including a Ferrari. When Michael had made his arrogant bet, Danny had recognized an opportunity. He recognized a chance to teach a lesson to someone who desperately needed one. Michael Harrison had made his fortune by stepping on people. He'd bought up properties in working-class neighborhoods and then raised the rent, forcing families out. He'd undercut competitors by using unethical business practices. He amassed his wealth through a combination of luck, hard work, and a willingness to do things that weren't quite legal. Michael was also known for his cruelty. He would mock people who worked with their hands. He would demean people who didn't have his wealth and success. He treated people as inferior based on their financial status. Danny had read articles about Michael Harrison. Danny knew who Michael was. And when Michael had pulled up next to him with his mocking attitude and his arrogant bet, Danny had decided that maybe it was time for Michael to learn something important. Michael had no idea that he was making a bet with someone who'd spent a decade building one of the most powerful vehicles on the planet. The race began at the green light. Michael hit the accelerator, and his Ferrari roared to life. The car was fast, incredibly fast. Michael felt the acceleration pushing him back in his seat. He looked in his mirror to see the old pickup truck far behind him. Michael was confident. Michael was already imagining what he would do when he won. He thought about how he would refuse the $5,000 from Danny. He thought about how he would use this story to brag to his friends about how stupid this mechanic was to accept such an impossible bet. For the first half mile, Michael's Ferrari was clearly in the lead. Michael was going 80 miles per hour, and the old truck seemed to be struggling to keep up. But then something changed. The old truck started to accelerate, and it started to accelerate fast. Michael noticed in his mirror that the truck was getting closer. He pressed the accelerator harder, trying to increase his lead. The Ferrari went faster. Michael was now going 100 miles per hour, but the truck was still getting closer. At 1.5 miles, the truck pulled up next to Michael. Then it pulled ahead. Michael couldn't believe it. The old piece of junk truck was beating his $300,000 Ferrari. Michael pressed the accelerator all the way down. The Ferrari went to 120 miles per hour, but the truck was still ahead. The truck was going faster than Ferrari. Michael was panicking now. This wasn't supposed to happen. This old truck shouldn't have been able to do this. At 2.5 miles, the truck was so far ahead that Michael could barely see it. The truck was doing 140 miles per hour easily, smoothly, like the speed was nothing. Michael's Ferrari couldn't match it. The Ferrari was designed for smooth, controlled speed, but this truck, this old, beat-up truck, was somehow more powerful. At 3 miles, Danny slowed down. The truck coasted to a gentle stop right at the highway exit sign. Michael pulled up beside him a few seconds later, completely stunned. Danny rolled down his window and looked at Michael. "I believe you owe me a company," Danny said simply. Michael sat there in shock. He couldn't speak. He couldn't process what had just happened. Other cars had seen the race. Some of them had been recording on their phones. Within minutes, the video of the Ferrari losing to the old pickup truck was spreading on social media. Michael had actually signed the bet, written it out on a piece of paper, and signed it with Danny as a witness. Michael had thought it was so funny, so obviously impossible, that he decided to make it official just to have proof of how stupid this mechanic was. Now that signature was a legal contract. Michael's lawyer confirmed it. The bet was legally binding. Michael Harrison had lost. He'd bet his company, and he'd lost. But there was more to the story. The video of the race had gone viral. It had millions of views within 24 hours. The story had been picked up by news outlets. People were calling Michael the arrogant millionaire who lost his company to a mechanic in an old truck. The story spread because it symbolized something that people loved: an arrogant, wealthy person getting humiliated by an ordinary person. It represented justice. It represented karma. But what happened next was even more remarkable than the race itself. Danny could have taken the company. Danny had won the bet fair and square. He could have claimed his prize and become the owner of a $50 million real estate and investment company. But Danny didn't do that. Instead, Danny went to a lawyer and arranged to have the company transferred into a trust. The trust was designed to use the company's profits to help people that Michael had displaced through his unethical business practices. The trust would: 1. Pay market rate rent to families living in Michael's properties, rather than the inflated rates Michael had been charging. 2. Develop affordable housing in neighborhoods where Michael had been buying up properties. 3. Create a scholarship fund for young people from working-class backgrounds. 4. Support small business owners who've been undercut by Michael's company. 5. Restore and preserve historic buildings in neighborhoods that Michael had been planning to demolish and redevelop. Danny became the trustee of the foundation, but he didn't take a salary. He continued to work as a mechanic. He used the company's profits to help people. The media coverage shifted. Instead of being a story about an arrogant millionaire losing a bet, it became a story about a humble mechanic who'd won a company and used it to help people. Journalists wanted to interview Danny. They wanted to know his story. They wanted to understand why he'd made the bet and why he'd turned the company into a charitable trust rather than claiming it for himself. Danny explained his reasoning in one interview. Michael Harrison spent his life stepping on people. He treated people like they were beneath him. He didn't see their humanity. He just saw them as obstacles or opportunities to make money. Danny paused. "I spent 10 years building that truck," Danny continued. "I did it because I love the work. I did it because I wanted to create something powerful out of something everyone else had written off. And I wanted to teach Michael a lesson. I wanted him to understand that you can't judge something or someone by their appearance. That truck looked like junk, but it was actually incredible. People who work with their hands look like they're struggling, but they're actually building and creating every single day. He looked directly at the interviewer. I turned the company into a trust because I wanted to honor the people that Michael had hurt. Danny continued. I wanted to use his money to help people, not to enrich myself. I wanted to show that when given the opportunity, ordinary people can do extraordinary things with resources and power. Michael watched the news coverage of what Danny had done with his company. Michael was devastated. He'd lost his company, his legacy, and his reputation all in one day. But Michael also began to understand something. He began to understand that his way of living, the arrogance, the cruelty, the willingness to hurt people for profit, had been wrong. Michael reached out to Danny. He asked if they could meet. When they met, Michael apologized. I was wrong, Michael said. I was arrogant. I was cruel. I treated people like they were less than me because they didn't have my money. I'm sorry. Danny listened to Michael's apology carefully. I accept your apology, Danny said. But apologies are just words. What matters is what you do next. What are you going to do with your life now? Michael thought about that question carefully. He'd lost his company, but he still had money, personal money that he'd saved over the years, separate from the company. He had resources. I'm going to try to make amends, Michael said. I'm going to try to help people the way you're helping them. 5 years after the race, things had changed dramatically in the city. Danny's charitable trust had used the profits from Michael's company to help hundreds of people. Families that had been paying inflated rent now had affordable housing. Young people from working-class backgrounds had educational opportunities. Small business owners had support and resources. Historic buildings had been preserved. But something even more remarkable had happened. Michael Harrison had become involved in the charitable work too. Michael had used his personal wealth and his business skills to complement the work that Danny's trust was doing. Michael had helped develop business plans for the trust's affordable housing projects. Michael had used his networking connections to bring donors and resources to the foundation. Michael had also become an advocate for changing business practices in real estate. He spoke at conferences about ethical business practices. He wrote articles about the responsibility that wealthy people have to the communities they operate in. More importantly, Michael had changed as a person. He'd become humble. He'd become empathetic. He'd learned to see the humanity in people, regardless of their economic status. Michael and Danny had become friends. They worked together on the charitable trust projects. They would sometimes drive together, Michael in a modest sedan, Danny in the old truck that had started everything. One day, a journalist asked Danny why he'd agreed to Michael's arrogant bet in the first place. I saw someone who needed a lesson, Danny explained. I saw someone who was so full of himself that he couldn't see how his actions were hurting people. I knew I had the tools to give him that lesson. I knew I had the truck that could beat his car. And I decided that sometimes people need to lose in order to understand what they've been missing. The journalist asked what Danny had been missing. Humility, Danny said. Understanding that other people have value. Recognizing that working with your hands is honorable. Understanding that money and possessions don't define your worth as a person. Danny looked out at the neighborhood around them. A neighborhood that was thriving because of the trust work. Michael had everything, Danny continued. But he was empty inside. Now Michael has less, but he's fuller. He's happier. He's more connected to people and to purpose. That's the real wealth. Years later, the story of the race and its aftermath became famous. Business schools studied it as a case about ethics and redemption. Young people learned about it as an example of how one moment can change everything. The old truck that had won the race was donated to a museum. It sat on display with a plaque that read, "This truck represents the power of humility, the value of working with your hands, and the possibility of redemption." Michael had learned his lesson. He'd learned that arrogance blinds you to other people's value. He'd learned that treating people poorly comes back to haunt you. He'd learned that true success isn't about how much money you have or how fast your car goes. True success is about the impact you have on other people's lives. Danny had taught him that lesson through a race. Danny had shown Michael that you can't judge something by its appearance. Danny had shown Michael that ordinary people, people who work with their hands, people who aren't wealthy, have incredible value and power. And in teaching Michael that lesson, Danny had changed the city. He'd changed hundreds of lives. He created a legacy of compassion and justice that continued long after that one race on an ordinary afternoon. Hashtag directed final call to action. If this story moved you, if it made you think about arrogance, humility, and the value of all people regardless of their economic status, then I need you to do something right now. Hit that like button. Share this video with someone. It could be someone who's been mistreated by wealthy or powerful people, someone who's dismissive of people who work with their hands, or simply someone who needs to be reminded that what we see on the surface doesn't determine true value. Subscribe to our channel so you never miss these stories about karma, redemption, and the power of standing up to arrogance. Because here's the truth. Our society has taught us to measure people's worth by their wealth and status. We've been taught to respect people who are rich and to dismiss people who work blue-collar jobs. We've been taught that having money and possessions makes you superior. But that's a lie that causes immense harm. The reality is that people who work with their hands, mechanics, electricians, construction workers, plumbers, are building and maintaining the infrastructure of our society. These are valuable people doing important work. They deserve respect, not dismissal. And wealthy people who treat others poorly will eventually face consequences. Maybe not always in as dramatic a way as Michael did, but the universe has a way of balancing things out. Karma is real. If you've been treated poorly by someone with power or wealth, please know that their treatment of you doesn't define your value. Your worth comes from who you are as a person, not from how much money you have. Please know that there are people who will recognize and honor your value. And if you're someone with resources or power, please use them responsibly. Please treat all people with respect. Please recognize that everyone has value, regardless of their economic status. Please remember that true wealth is measured not by how much you have, but by the impact you have on other people's lives. Leave a comment below and tell us, have you ever witnessed someone get what they deserve through karma? Have you ever been underestimated by someone and proven them wrong? Have you ever been humbled by someone who seemed less successful than you? Have you ever changed your perspective about someone based on learning more about them? Share your story in the comments. Your experience might inspire someone else to be more humble and respectful. Don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification bell. We release new stories every single week about real people who stood up to arrogance, who found redemption, and who learned that true value isn't measured by money. We'll see you in the next video. Stay humble, stay kind, and remember, you can't judge a book by its cover, and you can't judge a person by their bank account. Thank you so much for watching.